I'm going to talk a little bit about dental splints and kind of give my 2 cents and what I've learned. I've used dental splints for over 10 years. I first heard the word TMJ because a dentist in 2013 in Ukraine, I had told him about my back and neck tightness for over 10 years, and he looked at my teeth and my jaw and he saw the grinding and he said, "Oh, I think maybe you have TMJ." He sent me to someone else, and that person made me my first dental splint, and a little while later all the neck and back tightness was gone, and I was like, wow. So that was kind of my entry into dental splints, and it felt magical after chasing this mysterious kind of tightness and whatnot that was bothering me for close to 20 years. So most dental splints are they're hard and they're made of acrylic resin, at least in my experience. Typically they're made in a laboratory at the request of a dentist. You cannot just usually you ask them to make it yourself. It needs to be prescribed, at least in the US and places like that. Price wise, like I've gotten cheap ones in Asian countries for $50 to $100. If you're in the US, it's not rare for dentists to charge you several $1,000s, and even I've heard ridiculous prices like $5,000 or $10,000, which I think is, for me, it's just theft, because these things all more or less, they're made of the same materials, and it's just like the dentist's marketing and philosophy that he's trying to price that much, and usually his philosophy is wrong. He's charging that much for a bunch of hot air. What are the different types of dental splints out there? Well, if you were to ask a dentist, so the classifications that they will give you, there's orthodontic ones. These usually have some purpose related to changing or moving the teeth. I do not recommend doing that. Space maintainers, I've never used one of those, but it's another type. Occlusal splints. So this is what some TMJ dentists or dentists will use for bruxism or grinding. There's sport guards, so this is something you'd use to play sports, and TMJ splints, which for me are related to the occlusal splints. I don't think TMJ and bruxism I just see them as different sides of the same coin. Anyway, that's how dentists see them. And if you'd ask me, I have a simpler point of view. Right? Like I don't buy into, dentists like to kind of explain a lot of shit. Like I usually don't want to listen to it anymore. And I just tell them, here, make this. Otherwise I go find someone else. See ya. Right? And they often don't like that attitude. And I've argued with more than my share of dentists, and most of the time I don't have much respect for their intelligence, so I can be pretty nasty. So anyway, the way that I characterize splints, so there's soft versus hard. I've worn hard mainly for most of my life. I've worn soft for short periods of time. I think in 2017, 18. In general, I think they more or less work the same. Soft is a little bit harder. Like I used to make tracking splints, and you can't really adjust a soft splint. Like you cannot apply a dental drill to it. If you're doing something where you're checking contacts, then you can't really wear soft. You have upper and lower, so like it can fit on your upper teeth or your lower teeth. And I've usually always used lower. There was a period in my time, I think I was using a twin block that an ALF dentist gave me in 2016. So in 16, 17, and I think even 18 at various points of my experiments, I was wearing a splint that fit on the upper as well. Twin block is like an upper and a lower, and they kind of fit together. I always found it a lot more comfortable to wear a lower splint. I don't really wear a splint anymore, but I have people that are in my group that do, and I always tell them, get a lower splint. It's just easier. It's harder to see. It's easier to manage. You can work and talk to people as you're wearing it. Next is index versus flat. So this is where I have a pretty strong view. Do not get indexed. I have worn index splints. When I was first chasing what was, like in 2014, and I had all these issues going on after a dentist drilled my back teeth, I was wearing various types of index splints, and dentists have all kinds of names for them. Like it's a repositioning splint, and it pushes your jaw in a certain position. I just call all those indexed because it's trying to fix the position of your jaw somehow. Either by having grooves on the lower splint and the upper teeth fit into those grooves, or maybe there's some kind of piece of the splint that tries to push your jaw forward or something like this. For me, like, that is all wrong. I don't wear it. I don't recommend wearing it. It goes against my philosophy that the surface, if it's a lower splint, the surface is completely flat, and it doesn't even matter in my view where the contact is. I usually put the contact on the back tooth, and I keep it pretty high, so put some vertical there. That way, because the space, if you wear a splint where the contact is in the back and is high, you'll see that there'll be a gap between your front teeth, like your front teeth won't be able to touch, and that gap will close over time. This curve of speed that I'm talking about improves for a variety of reasons as the soft tissue stretches. And so as long as the contact's in the back and it's high, even as the curve of speed improves and you get healthier, your front teeth will not touch, right? It'll continue to close. And then when the front teeth do touch, then you actually have to add some more height to the back. So this is what I used to do back in the day for quite a while. Things that you need to remember about splints. So 1, only use flat ones, right? I just told you why. Do not use indexed. I'm not a believer in things like Starecta. Starecta is something I started with. It is essentially an index splint, like you're biting into this soft material and fixing a certain bite. I've experimented with that a lot. You know, it helped me get out of my issues initially, but I think it's a flawed understanding of how things work, and I don't recommend doing it. A rubber guard is going to be faster than even a flat plane splint. So I give people in my group a couple of different options. One is a rubber guard. Second one is a flat plane splint. Third is putting flat composite on your teeth directly. And there's people in my group that do all three. A lot of people do the first two together. So you cannot really wear a rubber guard during the day because you would look weird, and like most people have to interact with people and you can't exactly have this big rubber thing in your mouth. For those folks, I tell them, hey, if they want to go faster, wear the rubber guard at night. Wear it, a couple hours during the day when you're just by yourself. And then the rest of the time, if you want to continue to improve, like wear a flat plane splint. So there's some folks that do that. And there's some folks that just wear the rubber guard. But if you're just wearing the rubber guard, make sure you wear it a couple hours during the day. Because otherwise, like my general experience has been like you'll start, if you're not wearing it all during the day, like you may not make much progress at all. Because you're kind of reversing the progress you make at night during the day. Third rule, I don't think you need a dentist to adjust your splints. I adjusted my own splints for years and years. I'm talking like 8 years or something I would adjust. And so I saw how your occlusal contacts would change based on the different experiments I was running. And I would use these methods that a dentist had showed me where I would drill the occlusal contacts even. And it was extremely helpful. I owned a drill. It was this marathon drill that I bought for like $70-80 in Vietnam. I have it over 10 years. I use it still to this day. Sometimes I love it, and I use articulating paper. So with these two things, I learned so much about how this stuff works. And, I find zero reason why I need a dentist to adjust this. Like, it's super simple. And the philosophy, like in adjusting contacts on a splint is very simple. You bite on articulating paper, you look for the hard ink spots and you drill them down, and you keep doing that until the spots are even. Our fourth one is that a tracking splint is a useful thing. So I described this biting on the splint with articulating paper, looking where the spots are heavy, and then evening them out. And then you continue to do that as you improve. And what you find with this tracking splint, right? A tracking splint just means that like this is the splint where you're going to be doing this adjusting. And you'll see that you're often drilling on the front, right? So at the beginning, maybe the splint is relatively flat, especially if you have a lot of health issues. And then as you drill on the front, this thing starts to turn into more of a curve. That is your curve of speed. Like that is how you gauge your progress in this game. And that is probably the best way to gauge your progress in this game. So flat is bad, curve is good. And yes, I'll just end by saying, yes, dentists are going to disagree, and they're going to have a lot of nuances, and they're going to say what Ken says is a bunch of horse shit. Luckily, I'm never going to have to listen to them again, and I really don't care about their opinion, and I recommend you kind of come to my side of that understanding as well, because, they had me chasing my tail for years, and it was when I just said, fuck them, I'm going to do shit my way, that I fixed everything.